That afternoon, I was finishing the last few lines of a report when my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number, not saved in my contacts, flashed on the screen with the words, "Emergency call," making my heart skip a beat. I almost didn't pick up. But something strange, cold, crawled down my spine like a premonition of a nightmare. I never thought a single phone call could rip apart the world I was living in, but it did. And from that moment on, nothing was ever the same. "Hello? Is this Miss Layla Morgan?" the man on the line asked. Calm, polite, but unfamiliar. I nodded instinctively before realizing he couldn't see me. "Yes, this is she. What's going on?" "This is Carl, a loan officer with Prescott and Maynard Bank. We're calling regarding a mortgage loan of $498,000 that is currently 3 months past due. Have you received our payment reminders?" I shot up like I'd been electrocuted, my office chair nearly toppling behind me. "Wait, what? I haven't taken out any mortgage. I don't even own a home." "I understand this may come as a surprise," he continued, his tone steady. "However, the file we have contains your full name, date of birth, social security number, and your signature. The loan was signed in April, 3 years ago." April. 3 years ago. The date floated vaguely in my mind. I was working full-time at a law firm then, renting a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. Ava, my younger sister, was crashing at our parents' place after a breakup. I remembered her endlessly talking about wanting to buy a 3-bedroom house in the New Jersey suburbs. But she had no money. I gripped the phone tighter. "Is there any chance this is a mistake? Could someone have used my information without my knowledge?" "Ms. Morgan, that's exactly why we're calling. If you confirm that you did not authorize the loan, we advise you to check your credit report and file a police report for identity theft. But first, can you confirm your email address so we can send over a copy of the mortgage documents?" I gave him my email, throat dry as sand. When the message arrived, I nearly stopped breathing as I opened the attachment. The loan contract spanned 12 pages. Every page had my name, my details, and, what chilled me the most, my signature at the bottom. Except, it wasn't mine. It looked close, the curve of the L, the slant of the M, but it was too perfect, like someone had practiced 100 times before signing. It lacked the slight shake I always had when signing legal papers. It didn't have the faint ink smudge I usually left behind. My head buzzed. I collapsed back into my chair, heart pounding like war drums. My office suddenly felt smaller, stifling. I didn't know whether to be furious or terrified. I began rifling through drawers, pulling out every bill, tax copy, and old letter, anything to prove I'd never signed that loan. But the more I searched, the more a cold hollowness grew in my chest. Because if this wasn't a mistake, there was only one explanation: someone in my family had done this. And the only person who had ever complained about not qualifying for a mortgage was Ava. A cold fury spread from deep in my gut. Not because of the money, but because of the silence. No heads up, no permission, no warning. Just one brutal truth: I had been used. I looked up at the family photo on the wall. My parents seated in the middle, Ava and I on either side, arms linked, grinning during my graduation. A picture that once meant love now made me want to smash it against the floor. My phone buzzed again, a message from Mom. "Hi, sweetie. Come home for dinner this Sunday. We miss you." My throat tightened. No mention of the loan. No word about the almost $500,000. To them, everything was still just fine. I typed one word, "Sure," and hit send. Because I needed to know the truth. And this time, I wouldn't stay silent. I don't even remember how I drove home after that message. I only recall bursting through the apartment door, tossing my bag onto the couch, and rushing to my desk. My hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to type in my laptop password correctly. I logged into my email and opened the PDF from the bank again. Every time I saw that forged signature, it felt like an invisible slap. My name, my social security number, my birth date, even my old address in Ohio. All accurate. Disturbingly accurate. I zoomed in on each signature. There were 3 versions. The main loan agreement, an addendum page, and a payment commitment. Each one had Layla Morgan printed in neat, deliberate strokes. Too polished to be mine. I had never signed like that. I pulled out old documents from my drawer. My apartment lease, a previous resignation letter, medical paperwork, all with my real signature. I laid them side by side. My heart pounded. It was clearly forged. Yet whoever did it had done it disturbingly well. Well enough that an average bank employee wouldn't catch it. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Each of those fake signatures was a cold slap in the face. Someone had trained themselves to impersonate me. Not once, but at least 3 times on legal documents. It couldn't have been a stranger. It couldn't have been random. Only someone close could have had the access and reference to do this. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I pulled up my credit report. A full scan cost $29, and I didn't hesitate to pay. Minutes later, my full financial history loaded, and there it was. A mortgage loan for $498,300, opened on April 12, 3 years ago, under my name, marked with a giant red flag. Overdue 3 months. Negative impact. Hi. My chest tightened. Not just the mortgage. There were 2 unfamiliar credit cards too. One opened that same month, another 2 weeks later. Both carried current balances over $8,000. At this point, I had no doubts. Someone in my family had stolen my identity and built a fake financial profile to borrow hundreds of thousands in my name, and I had no idea. I shot up, pacing the room like a cornered animal. Each step fueled the rage swelling inside me. I remembered the one time Ava mentioned that house in Newark, how she bragged about getting the loan, thanks to knowing the right tricks. I thought she was bluffing for pride. Turns out she wasn't lying. I was the trick. I yanked open my desk drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. The one I kept my most important things in. A copy of my college diploma, my birth certificate, a letter from Dad before he passed, and the birthday cards Mom sent me each year. I opened one from 3 years ago. Her familiar loopy handwriting read, "You're the strong one in this family. We're proud of you, Layla. Thank you for growing into such a responsible, independent woman. Love, Mom." Independent? A source of strength? How could she write words like that, while secretly using my identity as a financial tool? I tore the card in half, then into quarters, then eighths, until all that remained were scraps scattered at my feet. I had never felt such a chilling sensation, not because spring in New York still held a lingering chill, but because the ones I loved most had become the ones who betrayed me. I grabbed my phone, opened the Notes app, and began listing. In this list, PDF copy of the loan agreement from the bank. Credit report with negative debt flag. Suspicious credit cards opened around the same time. Verified samples of my real signature. A scanned copy of the birthday card showing timeline and family dynamic. I saved it all and emailed a backup to my secondary email just in case. At that moment, a thought crept into my mind. If they had done this once without being caught, who knows what else they had done? I went back to my laptop, logged into my social security profile, and checked previous tax filings. And I froze when I saw that in that year, I was reported as having an extra source of income from property rental. I had never owned any property. Not once. I sat motionless for almost 10 minutes. In my head, every sound faded to silence. Each passing second only made one thing clearer. I had been stolen from. Not just money, but my identity, my control, and my future. And I wasn't going to let it go. That Sunday afternoon was gray like a storm warning. I parked in front of the house I had grown up in, the white one with blue trim, silent at the end of Maple Street. Standing before that familiar wooden door, I took a deep breath, as if preparing to enter a courtroom where I was both witness and victim. I had prepared for this dinner all week, not with words, but with silence. Intentional, weighted, purposeful silence. Because in this house, yelling would be ignored, but silence, used at the right moment, could be a weapon. The door opened. My mother, Susan, greeted me with her familiar smile. Her lily perfume wafted through the air. A scent so familiar it now made me nauseous. "Layla, you finally made it. I was afraid work would get in the way again," she said, pulling me inside as if nothing had happened, as if this family hadn't quietly trapped me in nearly $500,000 of debt. I smiled faintly. How could I refuse? You called me the backbone of the family after all. She didn't notice the bite in my voice, or maybe she chose not to. Inside, my father, Thomas, was glued to the TV, watching baseball with his usual beer balanced on the armrest. My sister, Ava, sprawled on the couch, fingers tapping away on her phone, her bright red nails clicking lightly on the screen. "You're here," Ava said, still staring at her phone. She wore a tight new dress, her glittering Gucci belt glaring like a scratch across an otherwise modest room. I headed to the kitchen to help my mother set the table. Roast chicken, tossed salad, mashed potatoes. Our typical Sunday dinner. Everything was painfully familiar, eerily precise. As if the past week had been a bad dream. We sat down. My mother poured lemonade into each glass, while my father mumbled something about the Yankees. Ava complained about a surprise power outage, then pivoted to the overgrown grass in the backyard of her new house. "It's so annoying. The grass grows like crazy, and the landscaping company raised their prices," she said, not looking up. I set down my fork and lifted my gaze. "I have a question," I said calmly, like I was asking for the salt. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Curious, unalarmed. They still thought I was the old Layla, obedient, agreeable, endlessly tolerant. "Does anyone know anything about a mortgage under my name, one for nearly $500,000? The room froze. The ticking wall clock became deafening. Ava shifted, tugging down her sleeve nervously. My mother set down her glass, slower than usual. My father coughed, looking away. I kept my tone steady, eyes locked on theirs. Finally my mother spoke, voice sweet but slightly shaky. "Oh, that... Layla, don't blow it out of proportion. It was just some paperwork. Ava needed help qualifying. You have excellent credit, financial stability. So you used your daughter's identity, signed a mortgage loan in her name without asking," I interrupted, voice low but firm. "That's your idea of helping? You didn't lose anything," Ava snapped, voice rising, shifting from nervous to defensive. "Everything's fine, right? What's the big deal? I needed support." "Family supports each other." I tilted my head toward her. "Support? By forging my signature? Stealing my personal info? Locking me into nearly $500,000 of debt I knew nothing about?" My father finally spoke, voice bored. "You're the strong one, Layla. This kind of stuff is just paperwork. People do it all the time." "You're being too sensitive." I chuckled. "Quiet. Sharp as steel." "And what kind of man stays silent while his wife commits fraud against his daughter?" No one responded. My mother swallowed hard. Ava looked away. My father changed the channel. I nodded slowly. "Thanks for the explanation." I stood, grabbed my wallet and keys. "Enjoy your dinner." "Layla, wait. You're making a big deal out of this," my mother called out. I paused at the door, looked back, voice still calm. "No, Mom. It became a big deal the moment you decided to sign my name on a loan application. Then I stepped outside. The rain had just begun to fall. Each drop on my jacket felt like it was washing off the final illusion of this family. I was no longer the old Layla, the daughter who paid in silence. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. And I wouldn't forgive easily. As for them, they had no idea the real storm had just begun. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I sent an email to my manager requesting a personal day, no explanation needed. I think she sensed it in my tone the day before. The quiet weight of someone standing at the edge, too focused for deadlines or KPIs. I threw on a gray sweater and dark jeans. Simple, clean, discreet. My mind wasn't concerned with fashion. Not when I was about to meet a lawyer about identity theft. Committed by my own family. The cafe where I had arranged the meeting sat tucked between a laundromat and an antique shop on Fifth Avenue. No one paid attention. No one eavesdropped. A perfect place to plan a counterattack. Exactly at 9 o'clock he arrived, Jonathan Reeves. A seasoned real estate attorney, well known in New Jersey legal circles for his fast, decisive and discreet style. He was nearly 60 years old, with salt and pepper hair, a tailored gray and black suit, and eyes sharp as a scalpel. "You're Layla Morgan?" he asked, shaking my hand without any hint of pleasantries. "Yes. Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice." I handed him the carefully prepared folder. The forged loan contract, my credit report, a copy of my ID, and the notes I had compiled over 3 sleepless nights. He flipped through each page, his expression unreadable, except for a slight raise of his eyebrow when he reached the signature. "You're certain the signature on the contract is forged?" "Mom, 100% sure. This is my real signature," I said, pulling out a past rental agreement with my old signature. "And this one here, on the mortgage. It's not mine. The ink is too even, the strokes too smooth. It's too perfect to be real." Reeves nodded, closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "This is identity fraud for financial gain, a serious matter considering it involves a loan of more than $400,000. If you choose to pursue this, I will represent you. But you need to understand one thing. If the person behind this is a family member, your relationship with them, it will not survive." I gripped my cold coffee tightly. I tried to be the good daughter, the good sister. I stayed quiet because I was afraid of losing my family. But they were never afraid of losing me. They were only afraid of losing their tool. I looked straight into his eyes. "I choose to protect myself, even if it means losing everything." Reeves stayed quiet for a few seconds, then nodded. "All right. We'll start with the police." We left the cafe an hour later. He took his own car while I drove my old Honda Civic to the local precinct. The building was small, with pale yellow walls, and the faint smell of old paperwork and stale coffee hanging in the air. I carried the file and walked up to the intake desk. "Hello, how can I help you?" the officer on duty, a woman, asked. "I'd like to file a report for identity theft and financial fraud," I said firmly. "The identity used is mine, and the loan amount is nearly $500,000. The officer paused, then motioned for me to follow her into a room in the back. We sat down at a table. I handed over the file, along with a copy of my ID and verified signature. She reviewed each page, her face gradually turning serious. "Do you suspect anyone specific?" Without hesitation I replied. "My mother, Susan Morgan. My sister, Ava Morgan. And possibly my father, Thomas Morgan. They are the only ones with access to all my personal information." She took notes silently. Finally, she set her pen down and asked, "Are you absolutely sure you want to proceed? Once this file enters the system, the case will be officially investigated." I nodded. "If I don't do this, they'll keep taking. And I'll keep losing." I signed the report. She stamped it. A small dry sound, but I knew it marked a turning point. There was no going back. That very afternoon, I sent a formal complaint to Prescott and Maynard Bank. I attached the police report, a personal statement, and requested that the mortgage be suspended under legal dispute. I sent it by certified mail with return receipt, so no one could claim ignorance. How did I feel afterward? Not relief. Not at all. Just a terrifying quiet. Like I had just activated a time bomb and was now standing in the room, waiting for the first shards to fall. That evening, I didn't eat. I just sat by the apartment window, watching the city lights flicker on. I no longer hoped for apologies or reconciliation. I had only one thing left: the resolve to reclaim everything they had taken, through law, through truth, through a silence sharper than any accusation. 1 week after I filed the report, my phone rang just before 8 in the evening. The caller ID showed my mother's name, Susan Morgan. In nearly 15 years of owning a phone, I had never felt that name hit my throat like a stone. I let it ring 3 times before answering, saying nothing. Her voice came through, gentle, as if nothing had ever gone wrong between us. "Layla, I think we should talk, calmly, as a family. Maybe this is all a misunderstanding? Your father wants to see you too. Ava as well. Everyone's tired of this tension." I stayed silent. Outside the window, car lights streaked down 36th Street like broken memories. "Finally," I said. "Winery?" "I made a reservation at Kingswood Restaurant Friday night. 6:30, no arguing, just talking." I hung up without giving an answer. But I knew I would go. Not to reconcile, but to see which part they were playing in their latest performance. Kingswood, a dated but favorite spot among the suburban middle-aged, in New Jersey, was elegantly staged. Low-hanging crystal chandeliers, warm golden lighting, burgundy leather seats, landscape paintings that tried to look antique, the perfect stage for the picture-perfect family my mother always tried to portray. I arrived at 6:28. They were already seated at table number 14, a corner spot near the fireplace. My mother wore a cream sweater, a silk scarf, and held a glass of red wine. Ava sat with crossed legs, dark red lipstick, phone face down on the table. My father, as usual, wore a worn-out suit, his eyes hollow, but pretending calm. "Layla, you're here," my mother smiled. "Take a seat, sweetie." I pulled out the chair and sat. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. Ava spoke first. "You know, things have gotten out of hand. I think we all overreacted a bit." I said nothing. Just stared at my mother. "You called me here for what?" I asked, my voice low and slow. My mother glanced around, then lowered her voice as if afraid someone would overhear. "Layla, I know you're upset. But this is a family matter. Bringing in the police, lawyers, it's not necessary. We can resolve this privately. You still have your apartment, right?" I squinted. "What do you mean?" Ava pulled a folder from her bag, placed it on the table and slid it toward me. "It's an agreement, just a clarification document. It confirms everything was a misunderstanding, and that you agree to transfer the apartment to me, since I covered most of the down payment." I let out a quiet laugh. No joy, no anger. Just cold. "And that mortgage contract with the forged signature is also a misunderstanding? And this paper? You call it an agreement, but what it really is a transfer of property?" My father chimed in, trying to sound rational. "You have your apartment in Brooklyn, stable and all. Ava's house is her foundation, possibly for her future. You don't really need it." I laughed again, with edge this time. "So I don't need the property in my name, but I do need to shoulder a debt of nearly $500,000 caused by someone else?" My mother leaned in. "Layla, you don't understand. If the media finds out, our family's reputation is ruined. Your father will lose his standing in the parish board. I won't be able to face anyone at church. Ava will never qualify for another loan." I shook my head. "None of you cared about my reputation when you used my name. Why care about face now? Ava snapped, no longer polite. You're being selfish. I just want a stable life. Everyone says you're successful, brilliant. You have everything. Why do you have to take everything from me too? I pushed the folder back toward them, unopened. I'm not taking anything. I'm reclaiming what was always mine. And I'm not signing anything. Not today, not ever. My father muttered something, eyes down, fingers tapping his water glass. My mother softened her tone, pleading. You don't have to sign now, just think about it. I'm begging you, Layla. I stood up. Cold, resolute. I'd been thinking about it for 3 years, Mom, and you took 3 seconds to sign my name onto a mortgage. I'm just repaying the debt you chose on my behalf. At full cost. I turned and walked away. No glance back. No farewell. Each step out of that restaurant felt lighter. Like I was crushing every illusion they had built around me. Outside, it was raining. Cold, damp and real. Unlike the dinner we'd just shared. I had just stepped out of the bathroom when the doorbell slammed into my head like a hammer. Looking through the peephole, I saw her. Hair a tangled mix of gray and brown, holding an oversized handbag like she was heading into battle. Her face had lost its usual composure. Instead, it was filled with a barely restrained fury, ready to spill over. I opened the door without saying a word. We need to talk, my mother blurted out immediately without a greeting. I stepped back slightly, leaving the door ajar, not inviting her in. Layla, she continued, her voice nearly hissing through clenched teeth. I just got a letter from your lawyer, and Ava? Ava got a call from the bank asking to verify the mortgage. What the hell have you done? I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. What have I done? I emphasized each word. I protected my identity, Mom. Through the law. You're suing your own family, she practically screamed, her voice high and sharp. Do you know this will destroy everything? Families don't take each other to court, Layla. What will people think of us? I didn't flinch. My eyes held hers. No avoiding, no glancing away like I had done for 29 years. Family, I repeated, my voice steady as steel. Families where people ask for permission, not where they secretly forge identities and trap me in a debt of nearly $500,000, then act like it's no big deal. Family doesn't steal the name of the person they claim to love. She froze for a second, then attacked again. Needs. It was for Ava. She needed help. She's your sister, Layla. You've always been the strong one. You have to understand. No. I interrupted, for the first time in my life, daring to cut off my mother while she tried to justify the family's betrayal. I don't have to understand anything. I've been understanding for 3 decades. Understanding why my sister always got defended when she messed up. Understanding why I was always the one who had to sacrifice without being asked. And now I understand something else. I've been too kind, too patient. And that only made you all see me as an endless wallet. A crutch you never needed to ask permission to lean on. My mother trembled. Her face flushed red, from rage and from being exposed. She looked around, as if hoping someone would witness the scene so she could slip into the victim role she often played when confronted. Layla, I didn't think you could be this cruel, she said softly, but her words cut deep. Do you know how much Ava's suffering? She's been crying all night, not eating, saying her own sister wants to ruin her life. I let out a cold laugh, like ice cracking. I'm not ruining anything. Ava signed a loan under my name. She walked herself to this point. No, it was me, she confessed, eyes widening as if cornered. For a moment, I had suspected, but hearing her admit it felt like a knife straight to the chest. So it was you. Because I knew you would never agree, she shouted, no longer hiding. You're always about rules and principles. I just wanted to help her. It was only a signature, Layla. One signature and now everything's a disaster. Why do you have to make it such a big deal? I took a deep breath, palms clenched. Not to strike, but to keep from shaking. A signature can destroy a person's life. You took my identity, tied it to a loan I didn't know about, and you called it help. And when I protect myself, you call me cruel. She said nothing, her eyes filled with disappointment. Not in herself but in me, for daring to finally stand up. I looked at her one last time. I'm not your Layla anymore. The daughter who bit her tongue, nodded along, handed over money without asking why. She disappeared the moment you signed her name on a mortgage without permission. I stepped forward and gripped the door handle. You should go. You'll regret this, she hissed. One day, you'll regret turning your back on your family. I gently closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking into place felt like a nail sealing the coffin of every illusion I'd held about family. Not a single tear. Just a cold clarity. The kind that comes when you finally realize some relationships, once rotten to the core, are only worth preserving by staying away. 2 weeks after my mother showed up at my door, I received a priority mail envelope from Prescott and Maynard Bank. It was thick, printed with the bank's logo and stamped in bright red, confidential. I opened it with the letter opener, my heart pounding but my hands steady. The letter was written in the formal, detached language of banking, every sentence carefully crafted to avoid liability, yet it still acknowledged one thing. I had been right. We confirmed that based on preliminary review and reports from law enforcement, there is clear evidence of identity fraud involving the mortgage account under the name of Ms. Layla Morgan, opened on April 12, 3 years ago. Immediately after came the statement. The bank would temporarily freeze the loan, halt all collection actions, and officially remove negative impacts on my credit report pending investigation. There was no direct apology at the beginning, but at the end, they wrote, "We sincerely regret the inconvenience this matter has caused you. We are committed to cooperating fully with the authorities and your legal representative moving forward." I folded the letter, set it on the table, and stared at the empty wall in front of me. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw things, to let out the rage I had been swallowing for so long. But I didn't. I just sat still and let the silence do its job. The letter from the bank arrived before I even heard from my lawyer. But Jonathan Reeves quickly confirmed. Not only had the bank frozen the loan, they had sent a default notice to the actual beneficiary of the mortgage, Ava Morgan. And since the house was titled in Ava's name, even though the loan was under mine, the bank had officially begun foreclosure proceedings. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, but I didn't feel guilty either. They chose to act like fraudsters. Now they were facing the consequences. 3 days later, I stumbled upon a Facebook post from an old high school friend with a photo of the house I knew well, the Maplewood home that had once been Ava's biggest dream. This place is about to be foreclosed. Owner's the daughter of Pastor Thomas. She used to brag a lot. Look at her now. I quietly clicked unfollow. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need gossip in my head. I didn't need the world speaking for me. The law would speak for itself. Since that day, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. At unknown numbers. Familiar ones, blocked ones. I didn't answer. I didn't reply to texts. I didn't respond to handwritten notes left at my door. I let every sound scream behind that thick door. Because I had chosen my path, and it had no room for pity, no space for rotted family ties. 1 week later, Attorney Reeves gave me an update. The police department had officially forwarded the case to the district attorney's office. The proposed charges were identity theft for financial gain, falsifying financial records, and bank fraud. I asked directly, "What are the chances of criminal prosecution?" Mr. Reeves responded without hesitation, "If the DA decides to take the case, your mother, Mrs. Susan, could be charged." Ava, if it's proven she was complicit or knowingly benefited from the use of your identity, will not escape legal consequences either. I nodded. I didn't feel heartbreak. Just a cold sense of relief. Outsiders might call me ruthless, but they didn't know how many years I had been swallowed whole by that thing called eldest daughter's responsibility. They didn't know how many times I gave money without asking questions. How many times I took the short end just to keep the peace. And in return, I got a mortgage worth $500,000. I didn't even know I had signed. My mother's neighbor, Mrs. Clare, left a basket of pastries on my doorstep, with a handwritten note. Layla, you don't know me, but I want to say you did the right thing. You're braver than anyone I've ever known. If you need anything, I'm nearby. I didn't eat a single pastry. But I kept the note in my drawer next to the letter from the bank, as a reminder. Some people out there understood. Someone stood by me. And most importantly, I stood by myself. The only person I stayed in contact with afterward was Attorney Reeves. He never used flowery words. No encouragement, no sweet talk. Only action. Clear, concrete, decisive. And during this time, that was exactly what I needed. One weekend night, I sat on my apartment balcony, sipping mint tea and watching city lights flicker below. A soft spring breeze swept through my hair, and I remembered 24-year-old Layla. The girl who once dreamed of opening a small bookstore, but shelved it to help Ava pay her third round of college tuition after failing again. I closed my eyes. No regret, no resentment. Because from now on, every decision I make will be for me. That summer came late, but to me, it was the first season in my life where I truly felt I could breathe. No one asked when I would get married. No one suggested I come home for a few days. No more calls asking me to lend a hand to help Ava through tough times. Just sparrows chirping on the balcony, the faint smell of coffee from the kitchen, and silence. So peaceful, it choked me. I began each morning by walking barefoot across the cool wooden floor, brewing a strong espresso and playing an old jazz record by Ella Fitzgerald. No rush. No deadlines. No one waiting. And I was no longer chasing anyone. I signed up for a pottery class at the local arts center. There were only 7 of us, mostly housewives over 50, and one quiet freshman with dyed blue hair. I didn't care who was who. My hands were covered in clay and glaze, and I learned how to let go of control. The first time I finished a misshapen little bowl, I burst out laughing. No grades, no comparisons. Just me, and a lump of clay slowly taking form under my hands. Every Saturday I biked to the farmer's market in Hoboken. Not to buy anything special, but to touch life. I loved how the vendors called each other by first name. How each bunch of greens still held the morning dew. How children giggled when they got an extra apple. I brought home simple things, a bouquet of sunflowers, a jar of honey from a local beekeeper. Sometimes a freshly baked sourdough loaf. Each item like a brick, slowly rebuilding me from rubble. I hiked alone for the first time in July. Bear Mountain was a little over an hour's drive from New York. I packed 3 bottles of water, 1 protein bar, and a heart still full of bruises. The climb was steep, the sun relentless. I almost turned back 3 times. But every step was a reminder. I didn't need anyone by my side to reach the top. When I stood at the summit, looking down at the Hudson River sparkling under the sun, I laughed. Alone. No selfies, no social media. Just presence. I also began writing again. Not to vent or complain, but to remember. I survived. I wrote down every feeling, every moment, missing nothing. I wrote about the first time I saw the forged signature. Rita wrote about my mother's face when she said, "It was just a signature." Wrote about the last time I closed the door behind her. Gently, but firmly. Writing made sure I didn't forget, and I didn't want to forget. Because forgetting opens the door for it to happen again. I chose to remember, to protect myself. One Monday afternoon, while watering my orchids on the balcony, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Hello, is this Ms. Layla Morgan? I'm Nora, an editor from Harper Grant Publishing. We came across a few excerpts from your blog. Someone sent them to us, and I was wondering if you might be interested in developing them into a full manuscript. I froze. Wog? I had only posted a few scattered thoughts on an anonymous writing platform, just as a form of self-therapy. I never thought anyone would read them. Certainly not a real publisher. I replied quietly. I never really thought about that. Nora chuckled gently through the phone. We believe raw, honest stories like yours have value. They can reach more people than you realize. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not for a degree. Not for a job title. Not for a good credit score or for being the obedient big sister. But for being me. Just me. I began drafting my first manuscript in August. No rush, no pressure. I gave it a working title. Don't call me strong, I just wasn't given a choice. Each line peeled away years of frozen silence inside me. I wrote, then cried. Wrote Abby, then laughed. Wrote, then sat in silence for hours. But I never stopped. Because every sentence was a step forward, out of the shadow of silence, out of the sugar-coated lies I once called family. That night, I played an old Nina Simone record. I'm feeling good. Her rich, powerful voice filled every crack in the walls, soaked into my skin. I sat alone in my small kitchen. No fancy dinner. Just a bowl of lentil soup and a cheap glass of wine. But I had never felt so rich. Not because of money, but because I no longer owed anyone. Not in paper, not in silence. I didn't need anyone's forgiveness. I didn't need anyone's approval. I only needed one thing. And I had found it. That day was a windless Sunday afternoon, exactly 10 months since the day I signed the police report. I had just returned from an outdoor craft fair, my arms full of a few rough ceramic mugs I'd bought from a local artisan. When I saw them, 3 people were waiting at the front entrance of my apartment building: my mother, Ava, and my father. All 3 looked shockingly worn down. My mother, who always appeared with flawless makeup and a perfectly pressed dress, now wore a frayed gray sweater, her hair disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. Ava stood behind, holding a torn handbag, eyes swollen and red, head bowed low as if trying to avoid my gaze. My father stood silently, both hands in his pockets, his posture hunched like a faded shadow. They didn't speak right away. They just looked at me. I paused at the steps, tightened my grip on the fabric bag holding the pottery, then said, softly as a breeze, I didn't think I'd see you again like this. My mother stepped forward. Her voice was hoarse, like someone who had cried for many nights. Layla, I know. I was wrong. But we're family, and now, we need you. I stood still. I felt no anger, no sorrow, just an emptiness. Clean, quiet, and solid. Ava raised her head, her voice cracking like an overstretched string. I don't have a home anymore. They took everything. I'm sorry, Layla. I know I was wrong. But you're the only one left. My father said nothing, but he looked at me. That look. No arrogance, no excuses. Only despair. I didn't scream. I didn't blame. I didn't bring up old wounds. I asked only one question. Are you here because of me? Or because I still have assets? No one answered. I nodded. That told me everything I needed. I stepped up the stairs. As I passed by, my mother grabbed my arm. You can't abandon your own blood like this. I raised you, sacrificed so many years for you. I turned and looked directly at her. Sacrificed? You didn't sacrifice for me. You trained me to be the pillar you and Ava could lean on, then called it family. But that's over now. I'm free, and I'm not coming back. Ava sobbed. Her tears caught in her throat. You can hate me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking, for a chance. I looked at my sister beloved once called the one who needed help. The one who, alongside my mother, signed the financial sentence that dragged me to the bottom. I didn't see an enemy in front of me. I saw a consequence of choice. I gave you all 30 years of chances, I said, my voice eerily calm. Now, I'm keeping the rest of my life for myself. I opened the door to the building and walked in. Behind me, no one followed. No one called my name. No one asked for another chance. Only the sound of the automatic glass door sliding shut behind me. A click in the quiet, like a final period. That night, I brewed myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat on the balcony, legs propped on a small wooden stool. A soft breeze passed through my hair, carrying the scent of freshly bloomed jasmine below. I didn't think about them. I didn't revisit my blog. I didn't write that night. I just sat there, in silence, drinking tea. And I realized something. Sometimes, the quietest walk away is the loudest thing you'll ever say. Not for revenge. Not to prove anything. But to declare one truth. I survived. I chose. And I walked away. Once. And for good. Layla's story is a powerful reminder that not every relationship labeled family is worth preserving. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals come from the people closest to us, and kindness without boundaries becomes a shackle. Layla bravely chose to protect herself, stood up through legal means, and learned to love herself through every step of healing. Her greatest lesson is this: freedom doesn't come from forgiveness, it comes from knowing when to say, enough. What do you think about Layla's decision? Was she right to cut ties with her family to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and surprising stories about family and life.